For the last 30 days, I only played Game Boy games, and wow, I honestly can't believe it's been 2 years since the first time I said that. The Game Boy is still one of my favorite consoles to play games on. I grew up playing it for hours on end, and I'm still finding new games that I love each time I revisit it. I decided to spend another month focusing on it, hoping to enjoy both some old favorites and new experiences altogether. But this time there's a bit of a twist. About 2 years ago I moved to Japan, so I don't have any of my childhood games with me. I'll have to rely on games that I've picked up in local shops and play them on this yellow Game Boy Color that I found for about $30 when I first moved here. It's a little more scratched up than the purple one that I have back home, but it gets the job done. And it came with this cute Hamtaro sticker on it that I decided to leave on. I like it. I think it adds character. I also have this EverDrive that I got a while back in order to play things like fan translations, ROM hacks, and games that are just too expensive to buy a genuine copy of these days, but to keep things interesting, I'll mostly be talking about games that I've actually bought here in Japan. I decided to kick off this month of Game Boy with a title that I've been saying I'd get around to for years. Wario Land is one of those game series that I've always kind of admired from afar. It's kind of the thing I'd look at and say, yeah, I'd enjoy these games, and then proceed to never actually play them. Well, I couldn't think of a better time to change that. I've always found it strange how this game's full title is Wario Land, Super Mario Land 3. But I guess when you think about how games were marketed back then, it makes sense. You couldn't just look up a trailer of a game on YouTube. Sometimes all you had to go off of was the game's title and box art, or reading about it in a magazine if you had access to one. Having a title that ties this game to an existing and popular series let people know that if they liked the Mario Land games, then this is right up their alley. And I couldn't agree more. I'm a huge fan of Mario Land 1 and 2, so you can trust me when I say that Wario Land is definitely worthy of carrying that Mario Land moniker. Wario Land is exactly what you want out of a platformer on the Game Boy. The levels are short and sweet, and each one has a unique idea behind it. The graphics have that perfect amount of detail and character without ever making this tiny screen feel too cluttered. It's always easy to understand exactly what's going on, which was something that was pretty easy to mess up on the Game Boy. And best of all, the game saves every time you beat a level. That probably sounds like such a small thing, but it really sucks going back to old games that don't do this. It's always a huge plus when games are just more convenient to play. Wario Land is a slower, more methodical platformer where most of the challenge comes from taking out enemies and obstacles in your path rather than making tight, butt-clenching jumps. And if you ask me, gameplay like that is much better suited to this little thing. Wario Land is great. Honestly, I'm so glad I finally sat down and played this game, and on real hardware no less. It really captured that magic of getting a new Game Boy game as a kid, and it made for an even more memorable experience. So yeah, I'm really glad I finally played this one. The feeling of playing these games on a real Game Boy and seeing them on the screen that they were intended for just feels so good. It honestly just makes me happy. Like, I don't know how else to explain it. I guess it's not unlike the appeal of listening to music on vinyl. I think I finally get why people like vinyl. Anyway, the Game Boy Color's screen doesn't really bother me like it does for some people. As long as you have a decent light source nearby and know how to get that perfect angle, you'd never even dream of paying for one of those fancy screen replacements. This isn't a knock at them though, I actually really want to mod my Game Boy, but honestly I'm just worried I'll mess it up. And I can't really justify spending money on a pre-built one right now, so I'm sticking with the iconic dark screen. I actually find it kind of refreshing looking at the Game Boy's original screen after spending so much of my time looking at modern displays like my phone and my laptop. It's kind of easy on the eyes, like reading a book, and I never really feel like my retinas are burning after a long play session, so what more could I ask for, right? Speaking of playing games on original hardware, if you don't know, game collecting is more expensive and honestly just terrible than ever thanks to scalpers and the fact that it's just kind of a more trendy thing to do than it used to be. So if playing on a real Game Boy is something that you want to get into, I highly recommend getting yourself some kind of flash card. I personally use an EverDrive when I want to play games that I can't afford on my Game Boy, And this isn't an ad, by the way, I just genuinely like these products, and if you're interested, they have my recommendation. It uses a micro SD card so that I can transfer my save data back onto my PC and play ROMs on there to capture some clean footage for videos like this. I'm probably boring some of you right now, but that's my setup for those who are interested. So anyway, let's get back to the games. I picked up this really nice copy of Pokemon Crystal back when I first came to Japan. I found it in a thrift store for around $9, which is pretty crazy, complete in box. But it sadly didn't have a working save battery. And I've replaced these things before, but I really didn't feel like going out and getting the tools here in Japan, so I took this opportunity to try a different kind of Pokemon Gen 2 experience. I've played through the vanilla Gen 2 Pokemon games more times than I can count, so I decided to check out a Pokemon Crystal ROM hack to kinda spice things up a little bit. I didn't want anything too different though. I still wanted things to feel authentic for this video. So I settled on Pokemon Polished Crystal version. That's kinda hard to say. From what I read, it sounded like a slightly remixed version of Crystal that addressed some of the original game's issues, adds in some new events and post-game content, but doesn't stray too far from the original experience. The only new Pokemon added in this version of the game are evolutions to existing Gen 1 and Gen 2 Pokemon, so you won't find anything in the wild that feels out of place. I've always found ROM hacks that cram all Pokemon into one game to feel a little off-putting in that regard. It just doesn't feel right for there to be Gen 7 Pokemon in Kanto, for example. But anyway, one of my favorite new features that were added to this hack is Wonder Trades. If you go to the Pokemon Center in Goldenrod City, you can offer up one of your Pokemon for a random one in return. Obviously, you're not actually trading with real people, but honestly, that isn't a bad thing, because I managed to get some decent stuff the few times that I tried it. It's a really fun way to make some unique additions to your team early on in the game, which can come in handy as they really upped the difficulty in this hack. If you end up trying this one out, don't say I didn't warn you. It's definitely made for the seasoned Pokemon trainers out there, and I don't know if I was ready. After spending a lot of time with Polished Crystal, I mostly went after simple pick-up-and-play experiences, which, in my opinion, are the type of game that really work the best on this console, besides RPGs like Pokemon, of course. I spent a lot of time just trying out random cheap games I found at local shops, and ended up with a few gems. We'd be here forever if I talked about every single thing I played, so here's just a few of the standout ones. One game that I got really into was Mr. Driller. It's a simple puzzle game where you have to drill through colored blocks and basically just see how far you can go without being crushed or running out of oxygen. Apparently it started out in the arcades and was so successful that they just kind of ported it to everything, and I can see why. It's a lot of fun. It's gotten quite a few sequels over the years, so I want to try those out someday and see how the series kind of evolved after this first entry. Another really fun one was Parodius. I'm terrible at these kinds of games, but I still find them fun to pop in every now and then and just kind of see how far I can get. The Parodius series in particular always kind of resonated with me just because of how different it is. Back when I first got into emulation, I used to spend a ton of time playing the Super Famicom Parodius games on my laptop, so I've always kind of associated this series with those early days of learning about Japan-exclusive games and discovering all kinds of weird stuff I never even knew existed. Even though this one here is just the Game Boy version of its Super Famicom counterpart, it's still a decent time and one of the best of its kind on the original Game Boy. Here's a weird one. I only picked this game up because I saw that it was made by HAL Labs, better known as the people who created Kirby. It's a pinball game with alligators, and honestly, that's about it. It's cute, but there are much better options if you want a pinball game on the Game Boy. I personally recommend the classic Pokemon Pinball, or even Kirby's Pinball Land. I actually ended up spending quite a bit of time with Kirby's Pinball Land, and I really enjoyed that one too. But either way, I'm happy to now own this little piece of Nintendo history that I previously never even knew existed. So yeah, it's just alright. crocodile pinball. Anyway. So, as this month of Game Boy was nearing its end, I decided to take a trip to a nearby thrift store that I hadn't been to in a while. I remembered that they had a section in the back of the store with just bins of loose cartridge games for roughly a few dollars a piece. So I went back there and grabbed a bunch of Pokemon games and just some other random junk that I thought looked super cute. I've always loved buying used Pokemon games as a kid and seeing what kind of teams the previous owners had. It's almost like opening up a pack of Pokemon cards, and sometimes if you're lucky you might just find something good that you can trade back to yourself. Unfortunately, Yellow, Gold, and Silver all had dead save batteries, so there is nothing to see there. This didn't really surprise me though. I mean, they were in the part of the store that's literally called the junk section. Nevertheless, it's unlikely for most of these games to have working save batteries, even if they are in good shape, so what are you gonna do? Thankfully, Red and Blue were in good working, well, I wouldn't say good condition, but they were in working condition. When I loaded up Red version's save file and went to check out my Pokemon, I was greeted to a blank screen. I'd never seen anything like this before, so I thought maybe the game had some kind of internal damage, you know, maybe it was stepped on or run over by a truck or something. I thought it wouldn't be playable. If you go into battle, the main character just wouldn't send out any Pokemon and the game would freeze. You literally just couldn't do anything. I don't really know what caused this to happen. Maybe the previous owner traded a Pokemon to another game and then turned off the Game Boy too soon, and then they were just left with no Pokemon in their party and the game didn't know what to do, it just kind of freaked out. But I don't really know how this could have happened. But after starting a new game, everything worked as it should, so I can put this one in the playable pile now. Now, Pokemon Blue version had exactly what I wanted to see. This person was at the Elite Four with a full team of unique high-level Pokemon. They chose Bulbasaur as their starter and also had a Dragonite, Gyarados, Lapras, and a Dugong. Don't know anyone who's ever used a Dugong before, but this guy did. It's a pretty solid team except for the underleveled Tauros that I accidentally sent out to die immediately. Poor guy. I'm guessing they were still in the process of training it. I haven't decided exactly what I'll do with these Pokemon yet. Maybe I could mess around in my Japanese copy of Pokemon Stadium with this team, but honestly that would probably just be awful because I don't know what any of these moves correspond to in English. So yeah. Either way, I just thought this would be a cool random thing to show in the video. So here it is. And before I knew it, my second month of Game Boy had come to an end. I have to say, I really love making these videos. They are just a really enjoyable way for me to get myself to actually spend time focusing on one specific thing for a period of time, which is something that I've always really struggled with. It's also a great excuse for me to just cross some old games off my backlog and just play random weird old games that I've never heard of, and sharing them with you. If you enjoyed this video, stick around because I plan on making plenty more videos like it in the future. I feel like, you know, maybe this could be my thing. I don't know. I like it a lot, so I think I'm just gonna keep doing it. So, anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care.